So in this video, we're going to go through the thought process that I basically go through when I'm going more into rendering and detailing buildings that I make in my cityscapes. There's not much to it. Mostly it's a couple of key things. The first one is that I try to kind of break down the shapes into more interesting shapes, if that makes sense. So the what you see here at the start is kind of the like rough stuff that I did in the sketching part. I kind of created a mishmash of shapes to like break apart these bigger structures into what will eventually become smaller structures. And the way that I do that, there's no real science to it. It's just kind of what feels right, and also what is interesting looking, and but still kind of rooted in at least some semblance of understanding of what buildings look like. Some of that can come from real life knowledge. Some of that can come from actual studied knowledge of like architecture and that kind of stuff. Some of it can come from reference. Mostly I try to channel a lot of that stuff from the times I spent living in like downtown cities. I lived in Japan for a while, so I try to channel a lot of that into my art because I miss it a lot. I try to think about it as like subdividing shapes. So you kind of, start with a bigger block, and then you subdivide that into a smaller block, and then into a smaller block. And then once it kind of gets to a size, relative to like what the scale of the space is, then you start thinking about the details, like windows and signage and pipes and all that kind of stuff. Once I get into the details of actually painting stuff, the way I try to think about it is thinking about the actual space. And by that, I mean, what does this space exist as? Do people live here? What kind of people live here? Do people shop here? What's the inspiration for this place, if there is any? What's the this is just in like broad terms, but it's the kind of thing that like helps inform what the design ends up being. Like what's the social situation of this world, what's the economic situation of this world, of this particular neighborhood. If people live here, then how do they live here? It's the kind of thing that ends up making a pretty huge difference, because you start thinking about the details that you want to add in, right? Like if there is signage, what type of signage? Is it restaurants? Is it fashion? Is it a mix of everything? Is it directions? If people do live there, do they live there in a crowded manner? Do they hang clothes on their window sills? Is it maybe a bit too scary to do that? So there's actually iron grates above all the windows. Like, it sounds silly to think about that much in detail about things, but that really is the type of stuff that makes a place feel like people actually live there. And for me, that's really important to the like type of cities and stuff that I draw.